What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Great League submitted to the channel by Mathman9x7 Valor, who's running a Shundo level 50 Bagon, as well as its full evolution line, which in total received 6 buffs / move reworks this season, with Dragon Tail and Brutal Swing on the Salamence, Dragon Breath, Dragon Pulse and Crunch on the Shelgon, and Ember on the Bagon. Now this goes without saying, this is a fun meme team. If we see a Wigglytuff, it's game over right from the start, but it will be interesting to see what these spice picks can do this season. So with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Which other full evolution line do you think could do with a substantial buff in a future season, and what moves would you change / add to buff those Pokemon? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so into the first battle, leading Salamence into a Gastrodon. So this is a great lead matchup for us, of course. Double resisting the Mud Slap damage. We're going to go straight for Brutal Swing. I'm not sure I agree with this. Brutal Swing isn't going to do that much damage, but we do grab an early shield advantage. At this point, gonna no shield the Body Slam. Body Slam does actually do quite a lot of damage there. A second Body Slam will definitely KO, but now we're full sending the Fly, and Fly is going to connect. It does big damage, but unfortunately, just barely not enough to get the KO. Body Slam, however, will be taking us out. But we can come in with the Shelgon, get that Dragon Breath farm down, and the opponent's going to come in with a Skeledirge. Now, this is where having Crunch full coverage is massively going to help us, as we can go straight for Crunch. Crunch is going to grab that final shield. And now at this point, we will use our first shield. The opponent full sends a Shadow Ball, so great shield usage there. We're now going to overfarm, throwing on very good timing, firing off that Crunch, and Crunch gets the KO from that range, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Mudshot Clodsire. So, of course, going to be slightly slower to get to the charge moves. We fire off the Dragon Pulse, and now we swap into our level 50 Shundo Bagon. So here, going to shoot up the Stone Edge. We might actually live a Stone Edge. I don't really know the stats on Bagon, but anyways, going to fire off the Flamethrower. Flamethrower, of course, is non-stab. It doesn't quite get the KO there, but let's see, can we tank a move? Yes, we can, and we're going to be able to reach a Crunch before they farm us down. And of course, from this range, Crunch takes out the Clodsire, and we're able to take that game. So into the next battle, we're going to see a Scizor in the lead. Now, of course, Salamence does have access to Fire Fang, which would be much better for us in this matchup. But once again, going to go straight for Brutal Swing. This time, no shielded, and it actually does respectable damage there. We're going to shield the X-Scissor, which is kind of interesting, and then snipe with Ember from our Bagon. They're now going to come in with a Chime Echo, but we have Crunch. So once again, this Dark-type coverage is very handy. It does huge damage there. Unfortunately, they just barely outpace us to that next charge move. Side Shock gets the KO, but we put them into range where we can Dragon Breath, farm them down with the Shelgon, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Swampert, and our Salamence is still very healthy. So at this point, we're going to full send the Dragon Pulse. Dragon Pulse is going to grab that first shield. We can tank a Sludge from this range. The opponent actually goes for a Hydro Cannon there, potentially not even running Sludge, but either way, we are going to once again full send the Dragon Pulse, and then presumably swap back into the Salamence, and we're actually just going to settle for the Brutal Swing. From this range, Brutal Swing doesn't quite get the KO there, but it doesn't really matter. We can just safely shield up the charge move, go for one more Dragon Tail, get that farm down, and we're able to take that game. But into the next battle, we see a Talonflame in the lead. So, of course, a good matchup for us. The opponent is going to throw straight away, so that does allow us a full Dragon Tail in for free. And you can see the energy generation is very nice here. We are once again going to bait with a Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to be shielded by the Talonflame, and the opponent there actually not opting to throw straight away this time, going for a full extra Incinerate. However, they go for it again, and they underestimate the energy generation. Brutal Swing gets the KO there, but they come in with a Lucario. They go for the Force Palm farm down, and actually Lucario with Aura Sphere could be quite dangerous this season. So we shield up. Unfortunately, that is just a power-up punch bait there, but we can now go for the Flamethrower, of course. Flamethrower gonna get the KO up against Lucario. We swap out straight away, but unfortunately, it's Togekiss. And even worse for us, they're not even on Peck. They are still running Charm. Charm, of course, hitting for huge damage. We go for Crunch. It does not do much damage there. They can fully farm us down, come out with the charge we've loaded, and unfortunately, we will be losing to a Dazzling Gleam from that Togekiss. But into the next battle, we are going to see a Lowland Graveler in the lead. So, of course, did get buffed this season with Volt Switch. We're safe swapping into Shelgon, and we are going to no-shield the first move. It's just a Rock Blast, doesn't do too much damage there. But we are going to overfarm and actually allow them to reach a second charge move before we throw our own. So this is going to force a shield. However, we now farm up over 100 energy, maybe just not used to the insane energy generation of the Dragon Breaths. But that's okay, we can still reach 2 crunches before they do get to the next move. Crunch number 2, gonna be grabbing the final shield, and the opponent trying to commit to a farm down actually gets farmed down themselves. We can now go for another crunch here. Crunch is going to, of course, connect, and we're going to come in with the Bagon, dealing super effective damage with the Embers, but of course, Ember doesn't do much damage this season, so unless you're going up against something like a Shadow Scissor, you're not going to deal huge damage, but we are going to reach a Flamethrower because we get there so fast. Flamethrower takes out the Shadow Mamoswine, and we're able to take that game. Into next battle, we're going to see Azumarill in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for us, but the pacing to fly might help us this season. We are going to shield the first charge move. Of course, Ice Beam, double super effective, would very comfortably one-shot us. We're now going to fire off that Fly, and you can see Fly does decent damage. It does just under half their HP here. So, Fly, number 2, coming through, and unfortunately, they no-shield again, recognizing they can just barely tank it. So, instead of taking a double super effective Ice Beam on the Salamence, we swap into Shelgon. We catch it there where it's only single super effective, but the opponent comes in with a Scizor. So we're going to go straight for Crunch. Crunch hopefully going to grab a debuff here. It does grab the shield, but unfortunately no debuff. And you can see up against a non-Shadow Scizor, these Embers actually don't really do that much damage. We're going to no-shield as they fire off the Night Slash. We're going to bank a charge move, then swap into our Salamence, hoping we put them into farm down range before they reach the next charge move, but that is not the case. And unfortunately, Scizor going to take us out with the Night Slash. We have a charge move loaded, but it doesn't really make a difference at this point. They still had a shield, and so we allow them to farm us down, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Gastrodon in the lead. So again, a great lead matchup for us. This time, actually full sending the Fly right off the bat. Fly is going to be shielded by the opponent once again. And once again, we can tank a single Body Slam, but it is going to do a decent amount of damage there. So a second Body Slam definitely does need a shield here. We're going to shield up the Body Slam. We're now going to look to overfarm in this matchup, this time baiting with the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing will not get the KO from this range, but it does grab the shield. But we go for another Brutal Swing, and I don't really understand that play. We could have reached another Fly there, but instead, the opponent able to bank some energy, swap and snipe with a Corviknight on Air Slash rather than Sand Attack, which is quite interesting to see. We're going to no-shield as they go for the Air Cutter, not doing too much damage, and now we're going to fire off a Flamethrower. Flamethrower, of course, going to hit for super effective damage. It does big damage there, but we panic a little bit. We don't throw a charge move, we don't swap out, and as a result, they fully farm us down there, which I'm not so sure about, but we are going to see the opponent also swaps out, doesn't get off the charge move. They got Shadow Machamp in the back, and we're able to reach a Dragon Pulse in time. Dragon Pulse, of course, gonna get the one shot there. We can just Dragon Breath, farm down the Corviknight, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Mantine in the lead. So, of course, if they're on Ice Beam, we're definitely going to have to respect the damage there. They do throw a little bit early, so we're going to no-shield, and the opponent is just going to go for Aerial Ace, but honestly, that does so much more damage than I was expecting. I have used Shadow Salamence in the past, and of course, you have to shield everything there. And it's kind of the same scenario for regular Salamence. At this point, of course, we unfortunately do not get damage registration error, so we miss out on reaching a second charge move. They randomly go for a Water Pulse for some reason. Don't really understand that play. Of course, Water Pulse does cost less energy this season, but still, Aerial Ace is the right move to go for there. But either way, they're going to come in with a Credilli, and things are looking a little bit tricky for us. We're going to go straight for Dragon Pulse. The opponent is actually going to no-shield that, which is great for us, but we are also going to no-shield, and I do not agree with this, because unfortunately now, we're leaving ourselves open to be permanently debuffed for the rest of this game. So at this point, we can shield this. But of course, Rock Tomb going to debuff our attack. And even worse, they've got Macargo in the back. And this is certainly game over. They are double resisting these Embers. They're already not doing much damage. But we're already also debuffed. They're going to debuff us again with another Rock Tomb from the Macargo. There's just literally nothing we can do here. We are going to shield. We're still trying to play this out. But Rock Tomb, you can see, is going to debuff that attack there. And this Crunch is just not going to do much damage whatsoever. You see, even a second Crunch would not get the KO. We're not getting there anyways, and so we just concede the match. But into the next battle, we see a Drapion, and you can see they are under-leveled here. So they're also going to allow us to get to the charge view first and throw it. So we're going to go straight for Fly. Fly, unfortunately, is going to be shielded. At this point, we grabbed a shield advantage. We're going to no-shield this, and they actually bait with an Aqua Tail. And potentially, they're going to do the same thing here again. So they go for another Aqua Tail. We're going to bank the energy, swap into our Shelgon. And at this point, we are going to no-shield this again, as the opponent is going to go once again for the Aqua Tail. So potentially, this might just be a single move Drapion here. In which case, again, going to no-shield. Aqua Tail not doing much damage. We get that Dragon Breath farm down. And they come in with a Vaporeon. So I do actually mention in the submission form, I believe, like, if you're seeing Vaporeon, then I don't really want to accept the submission. But it is the first day of battles of the season, so at this point we're going to go for Crunch. This Vaporeon was at least actually powered up, which is kind of interesting considering the Drapion wasn't. But either way, they're going to come in with a Mandibuzz. We go for Dragon Pulse. It connects. It does decent damage, and we also force the opponent into a CMP tie that they do not win. Shout out to Homeslice Henry for that quote. And at this point, it looks like Bagon can sweep, but it'll be interesting to see if we can go for a 2-shield flex. They're actually on Shadow Ball, which is going to do a decent amount of damage, but Bagon gonna no-shield. And now we're going to go for a Flamethrower. We're actually going to look to throw on good timing there. Good to practice it. And of course, Flamethrower up against the Mandibuzz, gets that KO, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Skarmory in the lead. So Skarmory going to be on Air Slash. Steel Wing did get nerfed this season, specifically for the Corviknight, I believe, because Steel Wing plus the Air Cutter is actually kind of OP. Even though Steel Wing was never a good move. Well, I mean, it was, but it wasn't a good move last season anyways. The opponent's going to full send a Brave Bird, but Shelgon actually able to tank it. Fire for Crunch, debuff their defense one more stage. At this point, I'd probably come back in with a Salamence stage just because Ember is going to hit for super effective damage, but they are quad debuffed. We only get a small amount of farm, and they actually come in with a Rock Smash Hisuian Arcanine. That is definitely not the right fast move to go for. We're firing off the Crunch. Of course, they are going to double resist the Ember damage, so we need the Charge Shoes to get the KO here. Maybe just waiting for the opponent to throw before we swap out into our Salamence. But either way, we're going to shield this, as the opponent does go for a Flamethrower, so definitely not the right moveset. We are going to go for a Crunch anyways, and Crunch, of course, will be getting the KO there, and they're going to have a Typhlosion on Ember, which is kind of interesting, but unfortunately, we've still got a shield. We can go straight for Fly. Fly gets the one shot there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Hisuian Quillfish in the lead. So the opponent is going to be on Poison Sting. They're just going to go straight for an Aqua Tail here, which we can, of course, resist. So, of course, going to no-shield that. We are now going to go straight for Fly here. Fly probably gets the KO from this range, in all honesty, and it does exactly that. The opponent does not respect the damage, but they come in with a Dragon Tail Steelix, which is certainly not ideal. We're going to go straight for Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing going to be no-shielded, and now we swap into our Ember Bagon. We're going to shield, and unfortunately, they do bait with a Psychic Fangs before swapping into a Dragon Tail Dragalge, so not ideal for us. We can only go for Crunch here. Ember is resisted damage, but we do grab a shield, and we can reach a second Crunch before they fully farm us down, and Crunch number 2 actually grabs the final shield. So at this point, we do still have play here, but it will be tricky. The opponent baits with an Aqua Tail, which is unfortunate. But again, I think this is too early to be an outrage. So the opponent, once again, goes for the Aqua Tail. They then swap, they snipe with the Steelix, but this should just be a Psychic Fangs, which we are able to tank. We're now going to fire for Crunch here. Crunch, unfortunately, not quite going to get the KO, so we will take more damage as these Dragon Tails, they had debuffed our defense. We swap out to clear the debuff, but unfortunately, that does allow them to come out with an Aqua Tail loaded. Aqua Tail, as we've seen, doesn't do much damage, but unfortunately, we barely miss out on reaching a Crunch. And unfortunately, we do lose that game. So, into the next battle, I'm going to see a Throw in the lead. At least it is fully leveled up, but this is an awful Pokemon. You might have used it back in the day for the Fighting type Cup because it was basically the only Pokemon that has Psychic type damage, which is quite handy when, of course, Toxicroak was the most common Pokemon back in that meta. But anyways, it's not a very good Pokemon in the Open Great League. We're going to swap into Shelgon, and the opponent does just go for a Break. Not going to do much damage. It drops our defense, however, and they do reach a second charge view. So at this point, we're going to no-shield once again, but they are actually getting us fairly low to the point where we don't even commit to a full farm down. Instead, just going to fire off the Crunch. Crunch gets the KO there. And of course, we do have all shield down on the opponent's end, but they snipe with a Bug Bite. Light Durant, which is interesting. Of course, we can come in, go for a full Ember farm down, but you can see these Embers still not doing that much damage considering they are double super effective. We do get the full farm down. We come out with very low HP, and they've actually got Survivor in the back. So interestingly, this opponent is running like a trio of regional Pokemon that are part of like a duo, which is kind of interesting. But anyways, Flamethrower gets the KO there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we can see a Shadow Dragonite in the lead, so we are going to stay in this matchup. Of course, they're doing a ton of damage with the fast moves. Unfortunately, not doing as much damage with our Dragon Tails, but we go for Brutal Swing. We grab a shield, we try to snipe with the Shelgon. They do just barely react in time as they fire off a Superpower. Superpower is going to grab our shield, and now they swap into a Lapras. So we're going to go straight for Dragon Pulse. Dragon Pulse is going to connect. Once again, it does respectable damage. And at this point, we are going to shield. The opponent is going to bait with a Sparkling Aria, unfortunately. And here we can see we are trying to make a catch onto our Salamence, but it doesn't work out. But it is just another Sparkling Aria. So, of course, we can tank that. It is resisted. We fire off the Crunch. Crunch gets the KO there. But they're going to come in with a Shadow Mudslap Grimer, which is a very cool pick to see. Unfortunately, they're going to do a lot of fast move pressure. We do swap out. We make the catch there. But can we actually outpace them to back-to-back charge moves? We're going to throw on very good timing here, but unfortunately, I believe they are one Mud Slap away. We are 2 Embers away, which means they will be outpacing us by a single turn. I don't think Crunch would have got the KO anyways. Mud Bomb definitely takes out the Bagon, however, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But into potentially the final battle of this video, leading into a Tropius. So this should be a good matchup for us. We can outpace them, do the Fly before they get to an Aerial Ace. We're going straight for Fly this time, and Fly is going to be shielded. This is just going to be a Leaf Blade, double resisted, but we're actually going to shield it. I'm not so sure about that, but we can, of course, well, never mind. I was going to say, we can, of course, go for another Fly, but this time, actually going to bait with a Brutal Swing, and Brutal Swing is going to grab the shield, however, and of course, this time we can definitely let the Leaf Blade go through, but you can see, actually, that puts us into range where they can air/farm us down, so it kind of makes sense as to why we did shield the first Leaf Blade. But anyways, they swap into Metang. We can go straight for Crunch. Crunch does super effective damage, and we're actually able to reach another Crunch hit as they're not on Fury Cutter, instead on Metal Claw for some reason. We get the KO there, and they come in with an Ember Ponyta, which of course did get buffed this season, but still not really the best Pokemon. We can just go straight for a Dragon Pulse, and of course, Dragon Pulse is going to get the KO from this range up against the Ponyta. They are actually going to throw a Charge Move here rather than just committing to a full farm down. That's fine with us. We can now come in with the Bagon, and this is game over. We're actually going to swap out, make an unnecessary catch just because we can. Of course, Leaf Blade gets the KO from that range, and we can now finally commit to a Flamethrower up against the Tropius, and of course, Flamethrower gets the KO, and we take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.